Today on Power Without Permission, I'm joined by someone whose story is all about resilience and discipline and self-discovery. Welcome to the podcast, Nick Midgley. How are you today?
I'm good, Siobhan. Thanks for having me on.
Really cool. So Nick, for people who might not know you yet, how would you introduce yourself?
I don't really know, to be honest. I currently, I'm opening up a drug and alcohol rehab in Thailand. I'm moving my business from Australia to Thailand.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that I do. Also own a boxing gym a couple in Northern Rivers with a business partner of mine.
Yeah.
We train fighters and we do promotions and also run a coaching business as well. I suppose it's life coaching, but I don't like to call it that,
Yeah.
especially someone like me, to be honest, I felt like I couldn't do life most of my life, so I feel pretty hypocritical being a so-called life coach, so yeah.
So this episode is centered, I guess, on the theme of finding yourself and the pathway to finding yourself, which you would be very advanced in. And I guess that phrase means something different to everybody else, depending on the journey that they've walked on. What does that mean to you on a personal level?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we grow up with all different types of values that get inflicted onto us, We grow up with, families with different cultural values, they have different cultural values or religious values, and just beliefs of, society values and stuff like that. And we get these things drilled into us and then we become that, and, when we get to a certain age, some of us are okay with it and can just live our whole lives through it. And people like myself, it just never sat well, I just never felt, comfortable in my own skin. I just felt like, either society was really messed up or I was really messed up, but I wasn't congruent with it. Like I just didn't feel like I belonged or wanted to belong as well, so a bit of both. The process of me finding myself was, or my life got to a stage where I had to, really, I just hit rock bottom after rock bottom and, every time I thought I hit rock bottom, I kept on digging and it got to a stage where it was real bad, and and I had to sort of find myself, and that was a process of peeling back all these layers, understanding my ego and how my ego sort of played out and stuff like that, and what I wanted the world to perceive me as rather than what I really was, and then once I realized, who I was and all those sort of all the bravados and all the, all those fronts and stuff that, came from fear, I had to sort of work through that fear and then, I got left with that shell of who I thought I was and, and who I really am and, I had to sort of work out, well, this is me, then what do I actually need? What are my actual values? And it had to be this real building up process, because I didn't even know what my needs were. I had someone ask me once, what do you need? I said, I don't know. It was such a basic, process for me. That I was so lost in someone that I wasn't, that, I was 35 before I really discovered who I was.
Yeah, wow, that's a long journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So online, you're quite open about your history with addiction. So for those who don't know, what is your kind of backstory there? If you're comfortable talking.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I am comfortable talking about it now, but being comfortable talking about my history of addiction is something only very new, and to be honest, I was forced into coming open about it, which is basically a process of I started being, I had rumours all going on around about me in my last relapse, after, a decent time clean off the problematic drugs that were really obvious.
Yeah.
And, a couple of overdoses, but I lost the use of my legs for a few weeks, and like some psychosis and stuff like that. I think it became pretty evident. Like, some rumours going on around the community I live in, and I basically just thought, well, people are talking about me regardless. So I'd rather just tell the truth, and that way I see they talk about the truth,
Yeah.
And then that just sort of like, it opened everything up for me to do what I'm doing today, and that was the pathway to everything. So yeah, today I'm okay with myself. Today I'm okay to talk about that stuff, but yeah, it definitely wasn't always the case. There's so much shame around my history. To answer your question before was, a lot of dereliction, a lot of heroin use, particular, also, IV meth use as well, so with heroin use, it's a quick route to dereliction and homelessness, and, with meth use, it's particularly IV meth use, it's, a quick pathway to, psychosis and all sorts of mental health issues, anxieties, depressions, and, and all the rest.
So when did you start those type of drugs? Do you remember?
I started drugs at 11,
11 years old.
Yeah, 11. I started smoking dope at 11, But even when I first started smoking dope, I just enjoyed that feeling of escaping myself. Like I said to you earlier, I never felt comfortable in my own skin, and so the second I got altered my state of mind, I just thought, I need to do more of that, and so I knew really early on that I was gonna do this, I thought I was gonna do this for the rest of my life until it became so problematic, I was willing to, just escape myself the rest of my life. But the heroin was at 13, I started dabbling at 13, and probably didn't pick up the habits of about 15 or 15, maybe even 16. But yeah, once you got a heroin habit, everything else is open. You're open for whatever, there's nothing worse than give me a bit of meth and give me a bit of crack, whatever. It's you sort of, you're rock bottom. Nothing else really matters.
Yeah. And so you started very, very young on drugs in general, so 11. And how were you able to even get access to that at such a young age? Like, from somebody that doesn't have that background at all, mind blowing.
Well, I mean, look, the reality is there's always people that are going to sell to whoever, and I was also knocking around with other people as well, a little bit older than I was as well, and but the reality is even the people that sell on at a low level, they're usually selling because they've got habits themselves, and so their values and moral ethics are pretty shot to someone there as well.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah.
So you became entrenched into the drug world at a very young age. Did that expose you to many dangers? And was there any moment as a young person where reality kind of hit you and went, this is real life, this is some real serious shit that I'm kind of involved in, and the people that you're involved in, and that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Did you have a moment where you went, oh, this is a bit much, it's not just me taking drugs?
No, there was I knew that world was really, quite dangerous and stuff, and I, I didn't come from a world like that, my parents were sort of, my mum was an immigrant, my dad was a hardworking sort of, business owner starting to establish his business, and was laser focused on that.
Yeah.
And, he drove his, strong work ethic back home with us and stuff like that. So I didn't grow up with that, but I dabbled in that scene a little bit, and I found it really quite exciting, but I thought that I had it under control. I thought I could live my life away from it and go into those environments.
Kind of dabble in and then be around your family and stuff, and it wasn't really going to affect one or the other.
Well, that's right, you know. So like I was dabbling with the drugs, but also just dabbling with the whole environment, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and then I got to the stage where it was causing me a lot of problems at home. And, my mother kicked me out, and I stole. I'd take any opportunity to use drugs. I stole from my mother, and I'd steal a car at 14. I'd take the keys off the kitchen table and drive to Footscray without headlights on, not knowing how to drive, and
And your mum kicked you out.
Yeah, I was a nightmare for her. I was an absolute nightmare. And I broke her heart. I traumatized my mum. She wasn't. She never expected to have a son that would go off the rails like I did. And she kicked me into my father's place, and my father kicked me out not long after because I stole from him as well. And when I had a habit, and this is the time I found out that I had a habit, and then I realised this isn't an environment that I can dabble in anymore. This is an environment now that is my life, and that was a real scary moment for me, because even when I was dabbling in it, I saw some really full on stuff, and I was obviously a really young kid, like we spoke about before, when people are desperate, they'll sell to a 13-year-old kid, So when people are desperate, they'll look for the weakest, most vulnerable option to screw over, to walk over,
which is generally children.
Yeah, that's right. Like I had a girlfriend at the time, which she would have been 14 and I would have been 15, and she was a sex worker, and you know what I mean, and we didn't really think about too much then and stuff like that, but I look back on that now and just think, fuck, that was fucking terrible,
Yeah.
There was so many so many men out there that wouldn't know when she was underage and did what they did, and there's a lot of, there's like I said, real desperate scene, with really desperate people, and, it was, an environment that when I realised I was stuck in, it really scared me, really, really scared me, freaked me out.
Yeah.
Which is where all my ego came from, I adopted an image that nothing could hurt me and stuff like that, and
was that to protect yourself though from
that
environment?
For sure.
Yeah.
I remember going to the St Kilda Mission, which is on Grey Street, which is just a place where all the homeless can go, and all the drug addicts can go and get their one meal a day at lunchtime, and I remember just walking in there at my age and looking for a seat to sit down and eat my meal, and I was so fucking scared, just because, all the people that you knock around with at night, it used to sort of petrify me at night, we're all there eating their one meal a day, these are all criminals, sex workers, sexual predators, and it was a lot of homeless and stuff like that, and I'm just a 14-year-old kid that's just made some really fucking stupid decisions in my life, just thinking I shouldn't be here, so that's when I started puffing the chest out and finding my way.
Do you have any hate towards your parents for kicking you out and making you go your own way, or do you thank them in a way?
A little bit of both, if I'm honest. A little bit of both. I'm never a victim of anything. I take full responsibility for everything. But there's still here a bit of residual stuff. We all carry our childhood wounds and stuff, and I've got this perception that I was the unloved child, and that my siblings were the ones that were were more favoured and stuff, and and it wouldn't have been true. The reality is that my parents just that didn't know how to handle me and stuff, and so they had to send me to boarding schools and overseas and to all these different people to to try to deal with me, so to speak.
They sent you overseas.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Just would this just like just be anyone else's problem but theirs,
Yeah.
And that was sort of perception I had as a kid was, like I'm unlovable. Yeah, but like the reality is like, my parents also had my siblings they needed to protect and
Yeah.
like conversations that I had with my mum with a locked fly wire door, her crying and me manipulating her for money and just fuck, like the reality was like, it wasn't because I wasn't loved. It was because like I was too far gone then. Like I was a kid that you could just, say goodnight to and expect him to be in his bedroom and sleep for the night. And like as a kid that was, go to his bedroom, pretend he was asleep, wake up, steal the key, get still $50 off the, off the table, be out all night, come home arrested by police and stuff like that, and like, I just, a place with, police knock on the door and get raided and just, silly stuff, like stuff that, my parents had to make sure that they keep away from my sister, my younger sister.
Mm. Do you think if you could go back in time, and it's a big question, but if you could go back in time and I guess undo that time of your life, would you do it?
No.
No.
No, I wouldn't now because of where I'm at, but like 5 years ago, or 6 years ago now, my latest rock bottom, and I still at that stage, it's like fuck, why, and just, I still carry that sort of victim mentality. I wasn't taking any responsibility for my stuff, and I just thought I was like, really unfortunate, and and just, I just had bad circumstances, and I regretted a lot of my decisions back then. But today I can see how like it's all shaped me to live a life with a purpose now. At the end of the day, we're most equipped to help the people that we once were.
Yeah.
And people with the problems that I had, they're everywhere. And like, people with drug and alcohol problems, they're going to medical professionals for help, and this isn't a dig at medical professionals, but, like, the reality is that they don't have a clue, like.
Yeah, like somebody that has no background in that environment whatsoever, like somebody like myself, would have no idea as to how to assist somebody in any meaningful way. Like I just wouldn't be able to. I'd be like, I don't know what it is you need.
And I don't think they can either. And I think deep down most of them will probably understand that they're way out of the depth of stuff as well.
Yeah.
But they get taught certain things, and then they do things by books and stuff, and certain medications for certain problems and diagnoses and stuff.
Yeah.
I get it, but they really wouldn't have a clue, But I think it's really good to have medical professionals that are qualified to assist with people that really do understand addiction and all the stuff with addiction and work together congruently to help people.
So you think it's a mixed approach?
Absolutely. I think that, I don't think there's a one shoe for, one size fits all, so to speak. I think that like there's some radical approaches to addiction of just like, cold turkey nothing, and for a lot of people, I do think for the majority that's probably the best approach with the right guidance from past addicts that have been there before and been able to help them through that process.
Yeah.
But I do personally think there's some people that just need pharmaceutical intervention, and certainly for a little bit as well, like there's conditions that people want to seek help at, when they're in such a bad way, so just something to sort of like hold them momentarily while they sort of go through the very worst of it, so they can sort of like, come off everything themselves.
Yeah. And when you look back kind of on your journey, were there any like red flags or I guess signs where you think maybe somebody could have stepped in to kind of assist you, or do you think you were just going to go and do whatever it is you were going to do anyway?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, Yeah, look, I think people try. Like, I think people try. I don't want to like put up an image of my parents as like as bad parents because they definitely weren't. But
Yeah.
like, I think they tried. They looked for options. They wanted to help and stuff. But I think again the reason why I believe only ex-recovering addicts can help addicts is because like no one has the answers. It's all too way too overwhelming for people. So.
Mm.
Now, people tried early on, but when things got real bad, everyone just like threw up their hands and just left me to be. The person actually took me over to Sicily when I was 17. He was someone that was involved in that scene as well. He understood that scene as well. He
Mm.
understood like what I'd go through and stuff through the detox, he took me over to Sicily when I was 17 for spent about 3 years over there.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that with him because he understood what I was going through,
Yeah.
Like he understood that, I had to go through a methadone detox and how that was going to look and how to sort of like, to get me through it. And he was very, very hard on me, but he knew when to be soft,
Hmm.
and
Like a mixed approach.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And like, again, only someone that's been through what he'd been through or what we had been through would understand, like what that timing looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because even I think there's a lot of, I guess, speculation around community as well. So like schools and stuff like that, stepping in, teachers, social workers. Do you think that would have been of any assistance, or you think the road that like your parents obviously putting in a lot of effort to help you out? You had family, friends, and family and things like that to assist you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably a reflection on my age today, but
Yeah,
like back when I was at school, like, that subject didn't exist.
yeah,
Like I have my youngest son's still at school. Now it's finished, but my youngest son's still at school. Actually, in fact, even when my oldest was at school, like a lot of what he went through got brushed under the carpet as well. And he's
yeah,
only 20. He's only 21 yet.
yeah,
But my youngest, he's 11 at the moment, and his school is so onto all this stuff.
yeah.
Like they're really sort of there
Being
is
more
a
switched on.
yeah, there is a real change happening, and like even minor little things, they're really onto it. They're and you know they actually really care about the kids in there now, and they look at them individually now. And I think there's a lot more pressure on schools as well to do that as well. I think the parents
Yeah.
over time and stuff like that, sort of, put a lot more pressure on schools to help with parenting process. At the end of the day, a lot of kids are spending, 8 hours a day at school and,
Mm.
maybe 2, 3 more hours with their friends at school, stuff like that, which are all influenced by the school. So schools have huge impacts on kids
On
and
kids,
so
yeah.
it's like a co-parenting role that's been in school now.
Yeah, yeah. And do you think, are you open with your kids about, I guess, your history as well, or no?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Which has been great. Look, I don't want to overexpose my eldest,
yeah,
but he's pretty open with it too, But he had his own one, he had his own one on drugs and alcohol. His mother's in, still in psychosis, in and out of prison, and and all that stuff. And so I've
yeah,
had him full time with me as well, since he was 3, I think, and I've had to be really open with him about my struggles as being a parent with trying to work out how to be a dad along the way and stuff. And
yeah. Because that would be a whole thing in itself, like what
yeah,
you're going through this personal journey.
yeah,
Um, being a father,
yeah,
yeah, would
yeah,
be
for
a
sure,
lot.
for
So,
sure.
is
Yeah,
there any kind of, I guess, advice you would give to other dads in a similar kind of
yeah.
situation?
Look, I think the approach that I took, and it was given to me by a therapist at one stage, and they said try to be as open to your children in a way that they can understand, and I've done that with both my children, and so like I haven't kept them sheltered from anything. I just sort
Yeah,
of like you know like just explain things in a way that is appropriate for their age,
yeah,
and the good thing that it's done for my children and I is we've got a really good open relationship. Like I'm that guy that my son, well, both my sons now will call up and they've got stuff going on in their life and they can confide in and I mean, because authenticity breeds authenticity. When you have open dialogues with people and stuff like that, if they're being open with you, it gives you permission to be open with them. Like I would have never taken any of my problems to my dad. My dad was completely shut off about his.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it takes someone to be open to make it seem like it's okay to be open.
To have those conversations.
Yeah.
And a lot of people listening might be quietly struggling with addiction, mental health, or just feeling lost. What sort of wisdom would you give them?
Well, like the approach that I take to addiction, we're always at cause, and so like, the reason why we take drugs and drink is, it's never because of what's happened to us, it's like it's either like something that we brought on ourselves or our reactions to what happened to us. And so, like, I'll just, ask people to sort of like, look at themselves and find out within themselves, like what they're either running from, what they're suppressing, are they lacking purpose in their life, direction in their life, and just ask them, well, what is it inside them that's tuning them up so much that they feel the need to distract, and suppress.
Yeah.
Because, the reality is, like, if we're well within ourselves, we might be sticking needles in our arm, we're really all drinking ourselves to living, healthy people don't do stuff like that.
No, not in healthy within themselves, I'd say, as well. Mental health.
Yeah, that's right.
So, what does recovery mean to you beyond being clean?
Recovery of self, working out who you are, and learning about yourself and building self-awareness, becoming comfortable with yourself, accepting yourself so much that you even learn to love yourself, and then when you get to that stage,
life's good.
Yeah, life's good. Yeah.
And as someone who's worked closely with people in recovery, what's your personal view on supervised injecting rooms? What do you think of those?
Look, I've got mixed feelings about it. Like,
I do as well.
Having been an addict, a street level addict before, I think somewhere where people can get, clean syringes and stuff like that is important. However, I don't want to get into it. I personally don't think it's a good idea to have actual injecting rooms and make it so visible, I talk a lot about spiritual laws and stuff like that, but there's a law of exposure and a law of proximity, and so what you're around, what you're exposed to, becomes you, over a period of time, and so for certain people where these injecting rooms don't exist, it's no issue, but if you're as I say, you're growing up around the Richmond Flats and, you're a kid that grew up there just out of circumstance and you see people walk in and see people injecting these rooms and, and that becomes normalised to you.
Yeah.
And, like, it's something that you're going to gravitate to a lot more than, what most people.
So you kind of have a bit of a mixed opinion on
it. Yeah. Look, to be honest, I don't think there should be rooms where people are, injecting in. Like, I get, like, it just means, like, they're safer if something happened, but, like, the reality is, like, we've got, kids that we need to sort of, like, keep safe from all that stuff and not overly expose them to that stuff, and like, and then, even me expressing that opinion, I know a lot of people sort of think very different to that, but like that's probably the my realistic opinion from being on both ends.
That's why I thought I would ask you, just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
So you're now Program Director, Hope and Health, is that what it's called? Yeah. which takes a very different approach to rehab. What does the phrase hope and health mean to you in the context of recovery?
Well, hope in itself is like it's a really powerful energy, you know.
Yeah.
There's an experiment done on rats, you know, where they put rats in water to swim, to see how long they can swim for. I think after a minute they all tend to drown. But they worked out that if they take the rats out of the water just before they're about to drown, and they dry them, they warm them, and they hold them for a little bit, let them recover,
Yeah.
and they put them back in the water, they'll swim for like 25 minutes, you know, because they've had hope. They have hope that they're going to get saved again and stuff like that, you know. And I think that what we want to do is we want to spark people's hope, you know, again, you know, give them a realistic, you know, belief that life could change for them through the modalities of health, you know. Because my personal view, and again, you know, a bit controversial to what's out there now, but like I believe that most people are falsely diagnosed, you know, and have diagnoses based on symptoms that can be prevented through better health, better physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So like I don't deny that these diagnoses exist. But like I always challenge people, it's like before you just accept that diagnosis and a lifelong, you know, prescription, you know, to medications that, you know, can have really serious side effects, you know. Want to see, you know, how life looks like when you're exercising regularly, when you're meditating or doing breathwork regularly, you know, when you're getting out in nature and you're eating good holistic foods and nothing processed, no sugars, and then you got a good regular sleep pattern going and stuff like that, you know. How's life look for you then? You know, if then the symptoms persist, you know, then maybe look at it, you know. But like, you know, this isn't a word of a lie. Probably over 90% of the people that I know that do that properly tend to find any diagnosis at all.
Yeah. So and there are situations where obviously people do need to have medication, but
for sure.
But I do agree with you on that sentiment that a lot of people don't incorporate those basic things into their lives to really kind of level up their health. Like grounding and breath work is a massive thing for me. I do it all the time.
Yeah, how good is it?
Oh, it's life changing. Like the first time I ever did it, I was like, where has this been my whole life?
The same. I remember my first experience too. Like it was in a men's, you know, workshop, men's retreat workshop. And I remember after I thought, this is the feeling that I've been chasing with drugs my whole life. You know? And I was able to do that through my own breath.
And even just to be able to just like afterwards just sleep really well.
Yeah.
Like that first time you do it, and you're like, oh, this is so good. Yeah, I love it. So when you talk about rehabilitation experiences, there are compassionate and sustainable experiences, I guess, you can give to people. So how does that look like in the daily program with Hope and Health? What's a day-to-day kind of, I guess, experience for them, I would say?
There's a framework that we follow where people get their physical, emotional, spiritual health, and so like our pillars are mindfulness, nutrition, nature, and exercise, and so like, you know, everything that do within the program, you know, measures up to one or multiple of those pillars, and so we give people the flexibility to and to empower them also to create their own recovery model. You know, something that's going to work for them, as long as it sort of works within that framework. You know, we believe that, you know, the ultimate success of people walking out of rehab with, you know, sustained recovery and sustained, you know, substantial sobriety is a balance of emotional, physical, and spiritual health. You know. And so we give people the flexibility to pick and choose what they want while they're in facilities. And, you know, they just pick the modalities that suit them. So, for instance, like with mindfulness, you know, if they want to choose to do meditation, or they want to choose to do walks in nature, or they want to do breath work or yoga, whatever their modality they want to choose for mindfulness, if they want to choose one or a couple, whatever they want to do, and they incorporate that into their program, they can, you know. if it's exercise, they can, choose to run, they can choose to do weights, we take to the weights room or take boxing sessions.
So you're kind of giving them their own way of how they want to do it, basically.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
giving them their freedom a little bit more.
Yeah, because like if we so say we, let's say I've got a boxing background, say if I thought, well, boxing worked for me, so anyone coming into my rehab will only box and, or breathwork's amazing, spoke about breathwork being so good, so cut all the other shit out, all the yoga, all the stuff. They made everyone box and everyone do breathwork, but the reality is like, a lot of people won't like boxing, a lot of people breathwork might be too much for a lot of people because, as it releases a lot of unresolved traumas and stuff like that. It's too intense for some people. It's not a good modality. And they want something more gentle. So like it's one side. Once it's recovery as an individual is everyone's fingerprint. I say. So we've got to make sure that people are creating something that works for them.
Yeah.
If we make them do a bunch of stuff that they don't want to do in rehab, and expect them to do it outside of rehab,
it's not going to last.
It's stupid. It's stupid. Not only is it stupid, like, I don't want to run down other rehabs, but that's nearly 95% of rehabs that's what they do.
Yeah.
They've got a program that they're fixated on and expect everyone to do it,
And do you believe that sorry to cut you off.
That's all right.
Do you believe that being clean beyond rehab means incorporating the things that you've done in rehab for long-term success? Or how do you kind of support people once they leave? Like, what's the...
Yeah, look, I think so. I think they don't necessarily need to do all the modalities and follow that model, but they need to understand, they need to leave with an understanding of what's going to keep them well,
Okay.
So like, they need to understand they will look after their emotional health as well, and that means like building connections with people, rebuilding connections with people that they might have lost along the way and stuff like that, and learning to forgive others and forgive themselves. Well, that's emotional health, if you just tell people to stay busy, fuck, they might not pick up drugs and drink again, but they're definitely not going to be happy, and so, I believe that, when we're looking at stats of people staying clean, it's not just enough, I think you got to look at, how's people's quality of life being impacted as a result of being clean, because at the end of the day, drugs and alcohol, they became the problem, but at one point they were a solution for their internal world, and so like if we're taking their coping mechanism away, we better be able to help them out in their emotional world, so like, that's my aim and that's my point of difference of hope and health. It's about giving people an experience of life, of how good life can be if you look after the internal world.
Yeah. And you talked before a little bit about proximity and how that's powerful. When you're trying to become clean and you're trying to, I guess, live a different life, does that necessarily mean you need to leave other people that you were around behind in order to have
It depends on who you're around. Like,
or do you think it's more based on your self-control and your discipline and stuff like that?
Look, I
know that's a bit of an open question. But...
Yeah, it is, but like it's a good question, though. It's like I think that I think we just need to understand that like our environment will always win out. Like you can't stay positive in a negative environment. Like we have an ability to change our state, our personal state at any time. So. Like my belief is that every day I can be good, I can be well, I can be happy and uplifted, But I wake up in the morning, 1:30 in the morning, bring myself to that state, which means that I can go to people that are not so necessarily positive, people that might want a better life, and I have an opportunity to bring them up. Energetically, like we rise and we drop to the energies around us. So energetically, if someone wants to do better, they'll be lifted up through me. But if people have got no intention to do better and they're in that state where they just drag everyone down and drag everyone down to their self-pity and their misery and stuff like that. I can bring myself to these higher states. If I put myself in those environments, they'll bring me down to them.
Yeah.
You know, so energetically, we've got to protect the energy, you know, and so like, in the industries that I work in, I make sure that, you know, like, before I give too much of myself, I make sure their intentions are to actually change as well, you know.
Yeah. So you have boundaries a little bit.
You've got to, you've got to, you know, because some people just wanna dump on you, emotionally dump on you, and don't actually want any solution yet, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, but like, environment's huge. Environment's huge. Good. In every environment, there's adopted beliefs, thought processes, you know, like behaviours that people normalise and stuff like that. You know, we'll talk about injecting before, like, you know, like, you know, in these environments, like what we see, you know, becomes like the normality, you know, and so like, you know, it's you know, we grow into what we're around, you know, and like say to people too, so when you get out of rehab, you know, if you got friends that drink and stuff like that, and you go out with them, you know, if you go out with 9 people that are drinking, and you know, you might get away with it like a couple of times here and there, but eventually you'll be the 10th. Like if you don't change your environment, you'll be the 10th, you know. And I've still got friends that party and they do all the rest of it and stuff like that. But you know, like, you know, I limit my time with them for starters, but also choose, and you know, I choose the timing with them as well. Like I'll have a breakfast with them, or you know, or a train with them, or something. So I'll bring them into my environment
rather than you going into
rather than me going to theirs.
Yeah.
You know? And that's just that's not a dig at them. That's just a self-loving choice that I make for myself. You know. You know, I realise how strong a pull environment has, you know. But we've got pulling power, like everything's energy, we're these energetic beings, yeah. So we've got this, we are where we are, and we've got a version of ourselves that we want to be, yeah. And everything in between's got pulling power, so we get pulled towards there. So when people are living really, really lives way below their potential, that pulling power is painful, you know, because they're so far away from their potential that they're hurting, yeah, which is why they're distracted with drugs and alcohol, you know.
Yeah.
And the closer we get to that higher self, I call it, you know, is like the more sort of peace we're going to have within ourselves. And even if we're a long way from there, if we're moving in that direction every day, like, we feel okay with it, you know.
Yeah. I can't relate to it with drugs and alcohol, but I can relate to it as a person where I feel like if I'm not achieving the things that I want to achieve, I'm not striving towards that person, I feel anguish within my soul. I feel like I'm wasting my time. I feel low. I feel depressed. I feel just shit, you know. So I can understand, I guess.
Well, it's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same. Some people just use different vices to change it, you know.
Yeah.
Some people just, you know, some people may not use devices and just sit down and watch Netflix all day. Yeah. It's the same thing, they're distracting from what's hurting, you know, that pulling power. And it's not bad, like, you know, and it's deemed as bad, but it's not bad. It's this, you know, internal spiritual compass that we need to honor and we need to operate our lives through, you know.
Yeah.
And if we don't honor that, you know, like it causes anguish, and it gives us obstacles and challenges to show us that we need to start paying attention to it, you know.
Yeah.
But people see the obstacles and challenges as problems, you know, and like, you know, they look at failures as problems, you know. It's all just feedback. It's all feedback from that higher self. So yeah, it's where we need to go.
Yeah. And how do you kind of, because your energy is quite calm and like very chill. So how do you keep yourself in that kind of, like, what's your daily routine like? What's the things that you like to include?
Oh, it's so big. It's so big. Like, but it's, a lot of it is, you know, I mean, like you know, my physical program is quite big. Like, I'll train 2 or 3 times a day at the moment and stuff like that.
How many times a day?
Yeah, 2 or 3 times a day.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, and I've got a big fight coming. I've got my last fight coming. I've got a world title fight coming up in a couple weeks, 2 weeks.
Holy moly.
To be my last fight, and at the moment I'm 41 as well, so I can't do all my training in one session anymore. The body just needs to recover, it needs to rest, it needs to eat and stuff like that in between. So I'll train 2 or 3 times a day. So it's my physical health. My emotional health, like, involves, like, you know, socialising and stuff like that with good people, like, and You've got a beautiful partner that's sort of very much in alignment to how I live. She's she's heavily involved in the fitness industry too, and like pedantic about the way she eats and stuff like that too, and also sort of really ambitious as well. So I get that need met from her as well. I've got two beautiful kids that either want to spend time with, even though they're sort of off doing their own thing now, which is sort of left out thinking, fuck, but like I still need a phone call from them every now and then, or a message and stuff like that. So I need that
you still need to feel, a part of that.
And then my spiritual need is, it's done through, like meditation, breath work, and solitude. So I can listen to that spiritual compass that we'll talk about before. And I can sharpen that intuition. So I know that where that pulling power is coming from and why, and then I'm just, I orientate my life towards it, and I make whatever adjustments needed to fulfill that.
Wow.
Which is where the name for
I was going to ask what that name was in relation to, so that's good. Yeah.
So I mean, it's essentially that, like I feel like, I feel like everyone should have a little practice where they can mentally sort of picture their last days and picture themselves in their deathbed and just think, well, would they end up dying fulfilled,
Yeah.
I just think that's it's such a good way to live our life, we look at their final days and make sure that on deathbed, like we've lived a life that we're really, really happy with, and then just reverse engineer it like you would a business plan or something, and then just live today as if like you're living for that last day,
So when you talk about that, do you have a legacy that you kind of want to leave behind, or something that you want to be known for by your kids? Or?
Yeah, well, I just want to be the best version of me, and I'll like and create the man that I always needed for my children and for myself, and and be the best father that I can be to my children, be the best partner that I can be to my partner. I've always really struggled in relationships because of huge abandonment issues from my childhood, mistrust around women from stuff that's happened in the past, and mistrust around myself as well, and low self-worth and stuff like that. It's all the stuff that I've worked on in my life in terms of trying to be in a relationship with someone, trying to better that with someone, so I can be the best partner to them as well, and give them, the experience of love that I want as well. And I just want to be a generally decent human being. Like I want to. And I don't want to because I do now. Like, I live a life of integrity now, and I put my head on the pillow at night and I go to sleep really well at night. And, and I've got a philosophy of, whether people agree with it or not, but like, I'm a really good person. So if you got a problem with me, the problem's in you, like, because the reality is like, I don't do wrong by people, like I do everything that's aligned to my spirit. I've made mistakes before and drive other people out the wrong way. The majority of people have got an issue with me, have got an issue with themselves that are sort of projecting on me and stuff, because all I am is just an authentic version of myself, and but fuck, it rubs some people the wrong way. Hey, like it really triggers some people. So, but but like whether that's true or not, I don't know. That's what I believe, and I'm good with that, because the main thing is I have to live with myself and I have to sleep with myself every night, and like I know what it's like to live a life where you're not doing well, where you're living out of alignment, and you just put your head in the pillow at night and you're tortured, and I know what it's like to have to medicate myself, to drink myself to sleep, I know that, that's not what I have to do today, so even though I might have upset a few people and there were people that don't like me and stuff like that, I know that if I can put my head in the pillow at night and sleep, then, internally I'm doing okay for myself,
the right thing.
So,
yeah. I think that's important too, just being able to, when you go to bed, being able to be like, I'm good. I'm okay with myself.
It's vital for me now, And it's also a checkpoint, I think, every human should do a bit of inventory at night, like at the end of the day, so to see how they lived out their day, and like, if there's any areas that could improve on, if there's any sort of like, people I might need to apologise to that I might have like rubbed the wrong way during the day and stuff. and try to sort of like, constantly like better ourselves and stuff like that, and at night, like it's a good reflection point,
Yeah.
maybe not right before you go to sleep, but like,
Oh, I do it right before I go to sleep.
yeah,
Then I'm
well,
up a little bit.
I do too. If I don't make it a proper practice, like, and then
I actually get a bit wired, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I need to like try and zone myself down,
yeah,
but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I sleep horribly.
yeah.
So can you take us back to the first time you stepped into a boxing gym, and what did that mean to you?
Look, the first times I was getting kicked out of school, my dad was taking me to a boxing gym and stuff, and
So your dad introduced you to boxing?
not really, like, not himself. Like, he took me to a boxing gym, hoping that I'd just be able to learn how to defend myself and stuff. And I didn't take to it at all when he took me. I think I was, 11 or 12 when he first took me to a boxing gym. I didn't really take it up until I was 20,
Okay.
and even 20 right up until now, like, I only had 14 amateur fights and this would be my 15th professional fight. Like, been pretty inactive a lot of that time just because of, drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. And what was that, I guess, first time that you actually committed to it and went, like, I'm going to actually give this a go, like a solid crack? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, I mean the first time would have been my first amateur fight,
Yeah.
And I had a couple little moments like that throughout different fights and stuff like that, through sort of like more sort of iconic fights in myself. But
Yeah.
yeah, my first amateur fight, that was incredible. I lost that, I actually got dropped like a week and a half out of my first fight, which shook my confidence and stuff. But,
Oh, no.
and I went into the fight, still fought, and and I fought well, and it was a close fight, and like, and I had whatever fights, like 30 fights after that, but like that was still the best moment for me, like just. Yeah, I mean, cause I was never more fearful than that first one, like,
Yeah.
there's always a bit of fear and, a bit of like,
A bit of
healthy
anxiety.
fear and nerves and
Yeah.
stuff like that with all of them. But that first one, especially because I've been, knocked out the week prior,
Yeah.
there was so much fear in that change room for me.
Yeah.
And it just being able to sort of like lean into that and just.
So when that fight was finished, did you feel like you had accomplished something, even though, like, did you feel like you did something completely out of,
Yeah, no, I did, and I felt really happy with it,
Yeah. Because I would imagine, like, the adrenaline and stuff before you even walk out would be just insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it did. I mean, it probably depends on the person. Some
Yeah.
people sort of, some people probably do it a bit easier than what I do and stuff
Yeah.
like that, like maybe not as bad now, but I've been a massive overthinker in my life as well, so I paint out a lot of different situations. And if my preparation is good, I can get the sort of like I get the sort of the visualization good. But if my preparation lacks, then my vision of how things are going to go sort of goes with it as well. So.
Yeah. So the key things before is it just basically your diet and your discipline and your kind of mental health.
Yeah.
Like everything that you're already doing.
It's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And it's certainly the way it's been for my last 6 fights. But prior to that, it was definitely different than that.
Okay, right.
Different than that, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you've experienced boxing as both a competitor and a mentor. How has your perspective on the sport changed as you moved from ring to coach?
I just know what the life skills that I learned through boxing was really pivotal. In my work life, I've owned operations, sold a few businesses, and I know the work and the work requirement, dedication needed for those, and I also know that it's like it's a healthy environment for any kid to be in. The people that compete, they tend not to drink or smoke or party or certainly have a lot more under control than what most other people do growing up and stuff. And for me, it was always, a good, clean, safe environment for me to be in. And so I wanted to get that to other kids as well. And, I look at the sport as boxing as such a neutral playing ground. Like, we have get bullies and stuff like that sort of need to be humbled. And, they come to a boxing gym and to a boxing ring and they get humbled. And then you have kids on the other end of the spectrum that need confidence and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They have none and they lift their confidence up to a degree where they all meet in the same playing field. And I remember, I was with my ex-partner at the time and we're walking down the main street of Kingscliff and I saw a couple of the parents of one of the kids that I used to train and they bumped into me on the street and said, "Oh, Nick, how are you?" I got talking, I said, "Oh, good." I won't mention the name. I said, what are you doing here? My son is in there, as a DJ. The DJ is got a gig in this venue.
Yeah.
And then, so I went in there to go say hello to him, and then all the other kids from all the other schools that all sort of met within my boxing gym were all there at his gig, and I thought, all these kids came from different environments, different backgrounds, different schools, and we've all stayed close friends, 10 years later,
So that's nice.
And I thought, yeah, it's beautiful, it was a real beautiful community that we had in Kingscliff Stable. We took these kids all around Australia, we watched cars to raise funds to get plane tickets and to go to all these different events and stuff. And so they were involved with the whole process. They were involved in washing the cars. They were involved in obviously travelling and staying in cheap, dingy hotels and motels and fighting together, supporting each other. And it's a real good bonding experience. Like even some of these kids now, I'm close to them. I want to see them often and stuff like that. There's a close bond you share with these kids.
Yeah, that's so nice.
Yeah.
And what would you say to people who say boxing incites violence? Because that's the thing that people occasionally will throw out there.
Oh, yeah, maybe, but at the end of the day, I don't think that's true. I think the most humble people, are boxers. Mate, people can't aggravate me enough to throw punches at them outside the boxing ring. It just doesn't happen with me now. I see violence just as drama that never ends. So I just won't do it. Unless if someone actually hits me, it's a different story. But someone provokes me, they can say what they like. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna buy into it and stuff. And I think most of the proper fighters I know are pretty similar, and the reality is, violence lives in everyone if they can pull it out of them, and I just think, I'd rather be around people that learn how to control it than
crazy
the ones that don't, I mean, all the people that have a couple of drinks and act like complete, violent maniacs, they tend to be people that have no fighting capabilities at all.
They tend to be a bit more.
They find their courage when they're drinking or they're drugging, So, look, I don't know, people might say that, but people say a lot of stuff, and people might just really express their opinions on whatever. I've certainly seen a really, nice, beautiful side of boxing, and I'm obviously an advocate for it. So, you won't hear me saying anything bad of it.
When I was actually researching, questions for the interview, I came across this quote from Muhammad Ali.
Oh, yeah.
Great fighter.
Absolutely.
And the quote was, "The fight is won or lost far away from witnesses, behind the lines, in the gym, out there on the road, long before I dance under the lights." And I guess, you talk about real battles and how that can be fought, before and after, going to the ring. How do you reckon that quote has kind of sprung up in your own life, in your own way?
Oh, for everything. I mean, for everything, I've had successes in business before, in quite a few of my businesses, and people notice the success. They don't notice all the all the heartbreaks that have gone into them. You know, I've had failures after failures with them and stuff like that. You know, but like still picking up the pieces again after and stuff like that. I've had liquidations and like, you know, I've had to rebuild through those and stuff like that, you know, like I've had so many rock bottoms in my life where I've lost everything in my life, sabotaged everything in my life, had to rebuild it. And people don't see, you know, that side, you know, and like, you know, anything that we want, you know, like it needs to be cultivated inside us first, like before it sort of manifests into the material world. You know, I was talking about this with my partner the other day, you know, like, you know, she's a, you know, partners that have been real, you know, she's a really pretty, amazingly gorgeous woman, really successful, ambitious, and got all these, you know, amazing attributes. And it's our partners that, you know, in the past, you know, struggled with first picking up the men and stuff. And, you know, I was talking to her about, like, you know, about the stuff and, like, you know, like, I feel, you know, today I feel like I deserve a partner like that. So there's no need for me to feel threatened by the men or whatever. Where, you know, like
that security.
Yeah, because I've done all this work on myself to internally to make sure that I was a man that was, you know, capable of emotionally holding someone in a relationship with them, you know, and that's come through like a lot of, you know, if I'm honest, like a lot of really dysfunctional relationships. And when I say relationships, like, cause my part in them too, like, you know, I just sort of like work through all my own wounded behaviors and my own sort of like, you know, like, you know, thought processes and beliefs that just, yeah, they need to be looked at, you know. And so, yeah, like, so everything good that I have in my life, like, people don't understand the work that went behind to get it, you know, like, and so, yeah, people always like, they only ever see what sort of appears in the physical world, you know, once the business is there, or, you know, once your family's together and loving you, or, you know, once you're in a relationship, or
once
you got your cars, or the bills paid, you know, people notice then, but they don't notice when you know, when you sort of like wake up in the morning, you know, for me it's 1:30 in the morning and you're starting your day, ticking off all the to-dos, the non-negotiables and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah. And how do you think parenthood has reshaped the way you view the world?
Yeah, just, just oh, in so many ways. Like, you know, parenting really softened me, you know, like, particularly with my youngest, my eldest, I was still, you know, twisted up on myself a lot as well. And, but like to realize, um, to realize that these beautiful kids of mine, you know, like they're gonna have to go through their own life and stuff like that, and their own adversities and stuff, and they're gonna make mistakes, and they're gonna have to, you know, pay for those mistakes and stuff like that, you know, and I'm gonna make sure that like I don't save them from that, you know, because like I know now that like me learning from mistakes of my own is what shaped me to be like what I believe is a healthy man today, you know, and so. You know, I look at my kids when they're hurting and stuff, and like, you know, I hurt for them, you know, but also know, like, you know, I'm here to support them, but like, yeah, they need to sort of work through their stuff on their own as well, and yeah, and it's that sort of like detached attachment, you know, if that makes sense. It's like, you know, obviously I love my kids and I sort of want to always parent them, but I need to make sure that I do that with good boundaries for myself as well as them. You know, the kindest thing I can do for them is for them to, you know, learn from their own mistakes and to grow from their own lessons, you know.
That's the hardest thing I would say is being a parent. It's
for sure.
Watching them. Well, I've only got a 3-year-old, so I don't know, you know, the other side of it, but I just want to wrap him up and just take him with me everywhere.
For sure. And that's beautiful too, you know, like it's beautiful to have that connection with them as well. And, because I think that unless they get that in their early days, you know, they're not going to be able to take support from you in their older days either. So.
Yeah, and I think I also kind of do a lot of, I guess, investment in learning on how to parent and how to show up for my son so that he can grow up into, a strong man one day.
Good
so yeah, so he's everything to me. So I get a bit emotional about talking about kids and stuff, but yeah.
I think that's really good too. I mean, I do the same. Like, and again, I don't want to appear like I'm running my parents down, but they did the best they could with what they knew. But in my perception, they really didn't show up in a lot of areas, and so which is okay because that's what they knew. But if I know better, then I better do better, well, for my kids, to make sure that my kids don't have to experience some of the things that I had to experience because of that lack of awareness or care, And so, I do the same, do all those humbling parental courses and read all those books and stuff. But it's so worthwhile, I mean, other than working on yourself, what's the most valuable thing that you could work on is a lot for your children, the legacy you can leave for them.
Yeah, and that's what I think I'm working on at the moment. It's one of the biggest things that I'm working on is the future that I'm building for my son. So
good.
Yeah.
So good. So nice to hear that too. A lot of people don't do that. There's parts on the same broken beliefs and thought processes.
I really want to show him that I can achieve all the things that I want to achieve so that as he grows into a man, he can, look up and say that his mum did all these things for him and created like a path,
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I push myself a bit further than probably what I should, but it's worth it for him at the end of the day. So
I love that. I love that. Because I mean, the kids will never do what they're told. They do what their role model. I think that you're setting a really good example for your children. Or children to come maybe. Because I thought the same thing when I sort of started to move to Thailand for 2/3 of my life. Having obviously my eldest being 20, it's no big issue, but my youngest being 11, there's a part of me that doubted if it was the right thing to do or not. I thought, well, what are my other options? Going back to laying bricks and pavers and stuff like that, or do I show my son that at all costs you chase your dreams, but you also, make sure you never neglect your responsibilities as well. So I'm trying to role model to him now. What it's like, sort of, to at all costs, make your vision come alive, and I'm doing that overseas, and I'm learning how to sort of set up a company in a foreign place and understand all their laws and do all the rest of it, build my vision over there, while also supporting his mother and making sure that she has everything that she needs to be able to do everything that she can for him, which she does fantastically as well. I just want to give her a plug there.
Yeah.
But also make sure that he knows that I come home as often as I can, and whether he takes me up on it or not, I'm going to have him as often as I can, and we'll stay in communication afterwards as well, in between, and so he knows that, you can do both, I had a father that sort of handled the business side, didn't communicate with his kids when he went, And so I think that, it was really admirable what he did, in his work life, but how do you balance that with his emotional life as well, it would have been incredible.
Yeah, sometimes I feel a lot of guilt when I go and I do things like this today, or I'm away for conferences or whatever, and then I'm like, well, no. Because when he's older, he'll be able to look up to me and go, she's done that.
Yeah.
So that's what's more important to me. But sometimes I get a bit emotional and I want to be at home with him, He's a little toddler, so he's cute and he's chunky, and I want to,
But you'll have that. Oh, I imagine you have that in whole life as well. Like you're still, you sort of distance you feel with your kids, So.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna be obsessed with him. He's screwed.
Yeah.
He's so screwed.
Especially if you don't give him any siblings, it becomes the only child.
Yeah, no, that's
laser focus. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I will have to give him a sibling at some stage because I'm crazy. I don't think. Yeah. Poor child.
That pressure on.
So you mentioned spirituality as part of your life. How does it tie into discipline and training in the journey of finding yourself?
Yeah, so I suppose with spirituality, just like everything, they call it spiritual practice because it needs practice, it needs consistency, it needs discipline to have that connection as well.
I didn't ask you, but do you believe in God and stuff or no?
I'm not in a religious sense,
No.
I believe in intelligence, in universal intelligence, and I refer to that as God. So if you hear me talk about God or talk about this energy, my own belief is that all religions are different avenues to the same energy, and that's my personal belief. I don't have any but I think there's a lot of similarities in all religions and stuff like that meet my own beliefs as well. Like prayer, for instance, like all religions, and spiritual lineages, they all understand the power of prayer, and and in my belief, it's like we live in a universe, an energy field, like where we where intention, shapes energy, and when we pray, it's intention, the intention, changes the potential in the quantum field to meet that intention. So when we pray, we get what we pray for, but in roundabout ways, we always get it, and so. I understand universal laws, like laws of proximity, and laws of attraction, laws of nature, pull and push laws, and stuff like laws of gravity, and just try to apply them all into my own life, and
so you kind of make it just work around you, kind of thing.
Yeah. I just think. It was taught to me once that, if you, you either understand spiritual laws and universal laws, or they will fuck you over your whole life, So, I thought, well, if that's the case, I better understand them, so God to me is that, it's that energy that's all governed by those laws.
Okay, cool. Yeah, interesting. So before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, what does power without permission mean to you?
Power without permission? Oh, the first thing that just came to my head was just be yourself.
Yeah.
Unapologetically you,
Yeah.
That's what resonated with me.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much for doing this.
No, thank you, Siobhan. I really appreciate you. Thank you.